Houston Cougars. A furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scotland Podcast. Back here, days off. I think what can only be called, for us as Houston Cougar fans, a tough loss, a tough end to the U of H men's basketball season in the Sweet 16. Hasn't been very often this season, past seasons, really any of the last 8-ish seasons that we've talked about Houston Cougar men's basketball on this pod, where we've reviewed a loss, whether that's postseason, regular season, and you look back in that one game and say, well, it was this one thing that caused the Cougs to lose it. And unfortunately, not to give away what we're going to talk about, because there's plenty to unpack from, unfortunately, what was the last game of the Cougar men's basketball season. And we have plenty of stuff to talk about tonight that's not men's basketball here. But I mean, it's the dominant topic. It's the topic even several days removed from the loss, Bobby, that's on all of our minds. Where are you at now, 5 days removed from, unfortunately, what was the end of this most recent Cougar men's basketball season?
Yeah, I'm better than I was. I wasn't like, I think I texted you before the game even started, like an hour or two before the game, and I was like, I'm oddly not nervous about this game because it felt like we were playing a good team. I wasn't not nervous because I thought we were going to blow them out. I was actually not nervous because if you lose to Illinois, like, they're really good. They're probably the top 3 seed. You could argue maybe they should have been a 2 seed. And so I wasn't going to be upset like that. It wasn't going to be this like thing that was going to kill my mood. And then we lost how we lost. And I had a really bad taste in my mouth Friday, Saturday from it. And yeah, like I said, a little bit better now than I was probably on Saturday. I didn't even watch any of the Elite Eight games. I just couldn't stomach it. But I'll watch some of the Final Four and just kind of be ready for that.
You know, it's weird. I would say my experience was pretty similar to yours. My feelings after the game were pretty similar to yours. When the 2 years ago, when we lost in the Sweet 16, when Jamal Shed got hurt, I couldn't watch that one, the remainder of the tournament, until like maybe the finals. And even that one, I watched like 5 minutes of it because like UConn very much ran, who I think it was Purdue that year, ran them off the court. 3 years ago when we lost to Miami and KC in the Sweet 16, had a hard time with that one. And you know, checking back in the tournament, that was the year the Final Four was supposed to be in Houston. If you'll recall, it was like, it's destiny. And I don't know, I say this firmly tongue planted in cheek. This is not actually a serious take here, but I don't know, man. Maybe we should be, other than San Antonio. I think even with the loss last year, I feel like San Antonio probably has good mojo with the Sweet 16 win over Arizona 4 years ago, with the Final Four win over Duke, even with the loss last year. Other than San Antonio, like, I'm sorry, Houston and Dallas, because the Dallas game 2 years ago is the Jamal Shed. I don't want to see any more postseason games in Houston and Dallas. Like, those have been permanently, I feel like, soured for me. But I don't know what it was about it. I was able to go, I watched like a decent amount of the Elite Eight, not 100% of it. Like, I had other stuff going on. I wasn't like, oh, I got to be in front of the TV for 100% of the basketball. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I made my peace with it with about 8 minutes left or so in the second half. Whenever they got out to like a 17, 18 point lead, it was painful. But at that point, I was like, all right, like, that's the season. And you didn't entirely go down with that fight, but you could probably classify what the Cougs did late as kind of in the category of, I guess, too little too late to really get back in that one. But maybe it's because it wasn't a last second, you had a chance to win it late, kind of like you did in last year's championship game. It was a, you got ran off the court. I don't know. Maybe it was easier to make my peace there. But yeah, I got to start with Cougar men's basketball here. Thursday night was one of those times where, like I said at the top, one thing really caused you to lose this basketball game. If you had come to me from the future, Bobby, last week as we were previewing this game and told me just that the Cougars were going to hold the Illini to their second lowest points total all season, if I tell you that, feeling pretty good about this being a Cougar win, just knowing that one piece of information, even knowing that basketball game is more than just one specific piece of information. And we could just look at this game and say pretty definitively, you lost because you couldn't make shots with any consistency when ice cold in the early second half, when Illinois did what truly elite offensive teams do and had a scoring run that buried you in too deep of a metaphorical hole to get out of, Bobby. Everything psychological, everything physical in me is rebelling against talking about this game. But in addition to the not making shots, in addition to anything else you want to talk about, what were your takeaways from this Sweet 16 loss that we would all like to forget?
Yeah, man, I think it all boils down to one thing. I would love to say it was anything to blame except for the shooting in this game. You shot 27% in the first half. In the second half, you were better, but I was kind of curious because it didn't really feel like you were much better. I was curious how much of it was to that point that you made earlier when the game was kind of out of hand. How many of those buckets were really kind of you clawing to get back? And Illinois maybe taking a little bit of the pressure off. And yeah, shooting 30 in the first 12 minutes of the second half, the Cougs shot 37%. Sam, that's just not going to cut it against the top 3 offense in the country. I think defensively, I think you did really well, especially in the first half. You kept them to 36% shooting and only 27% from 3. With a team filled with a bunch of European white dudes, holding them to 36% from 3,
24 points,
or 20,
memory serves.
27% from 3. If you had told Sampson that you had held Illinois to 24 points in the first half, he would have been ecstatic. And instead, the Cougs are down 2. Somehow you shot worse than they did in that first half. You held them to what you said, their second lowest point total of the season, and you lost by 10. And it didn't, and 10 feels generous, if we're being honest.
Agreed, yeah.
You know, one of the things post-game that I thought was very interesting is to hear their coach talk about the game plan. And sometimes you know, whenever your team doesn't shoot well, you want to say, like, we were getting open shots. If we knock those down, you win the game. But that was kind of their game plan if you heard them talk. And I will admit, I thought, you know, kind of looking back after he said this, it was a little bit of a risk. They admitted that the game plan was to let the Cougar big men shoot because when Sinak shot, that meant one of the guards wasn't shooting. We'd rather have Sinak shoot. We'd rather have JoJo Tugler shoot rather than having Kingston Flemings, having Milos, having Emmanuel take those shots. Great game plan. It's a little bit of a risk though because Sinak had kind of been shooting it really well leading into the game. He went 5 of 9 versus A&M, 2 of 4 versus Idaho, 5 of 13 versus Kansas, 5 of 6 versus BYU, but it paid off for him. If Sinak goes 5 of 12, maybe this is a totally different game. Not to put it all on Sinak, but what I think it does is if he knocks down the first 2 or 3, or if he starts 3 of 4, something like that. I think that creates some space for the guards, and that's kind of what you want from Chris Sinak, right? You want him to make some shots so that the big men gotta kind of step out and you can let Kingston Flemings do a little bit of work. But I thought defensively you look solid. You kept them off the offensive glass, which is something we talked about heading into the game. You turned them over more than you turned it over. And look, I can see people point to free throws and say you only shot 2 free throws. But Sam, we didn't do anything offensively to even warrant getting a call. Like there was later in the game, it was, you know, there were some calls maybe
like 1 or 2 calls, but
game.
nothing with any consistency. Yeah. No,
but nothing where I would be like, oh man, if they kept the whistle in their like you weren't attacking the rim, and that's usually where you see calls happen. Now, were there probably more fouls than were called? Yeah, probably, but that's not the difference in this game, in my opinion. Yes, they shot more, but I think a lot of that was because of late game fouling, trying to stay in the game a little bit. But yeah, I can't really get mad at a lot of those no calls. You know, it wasn't good, man. Everything comes back to shooting. I think that's what made this so hard to process for me. Like, I feel like when you lose in the last second, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, you're so defeated from that, but at the end of the day, you're like, maybe one or two small things could have. There is nothing that could have changed in this game outside of shooting, and I think that's the frustrating part. Is you haven't been terrible shooting. Your offense has been better this year than it has been in the last few years, and that's kind of that made up for your defense not being, number one or number two in the country. And so to not see the shots fall, that it's the same thing that has plagued this team all season. And I think that's what made it so difficult for me to really not to just kind of let this one slide a little bit. Was it wasn't a heartbreak. It was so frustrating because the same problems you've seen all season that have popped up, long scoring droughts, things that you knew you couldn't do. You had multiple 5-minute long scoring droughts. You can't do that. You can't go a quarter of the game without scoring, especially when you're playing a top 3 offense in the country. It just cannot happen.
We said it at the top, both of us. You can't really attribute this loss to anything but an inability to shoot the ball, and that's still true. But doing my notes on this, I thought about it some more. You did have one major problem. It was a problem that was downstream from your inability to make shots, and that was the inability to grab offensive boards off those misses. If you've watched Cougar men's basketball, at least the last few years, you could probably remember at least several games where the Cougs specifically overcame an inability to shoot the ball because you grabbed just a ton of offensive boards. Look at the box score versus the Illini. At the most surface level, you'd see, well, Cougs are about even with Illinois on offensive rebounds and not identify this as a major issue, which ignores the fact that you grabbed one fewer offensive rebound than the Illini while taking 13 more shots. Like that's the problem. Being an opponent with as much skill as Illinois has offensively when you're just barely making more than a third of all your shots on its own, pretty Herculean task. When you're just barely making more than 1/3 of your shots and only getting a second chance on about a quarter of your misses, I mean, that Herculean task becomes essentially impossible. Because that was one of those things you had to notice from watching this game live. That one, you weren't getting good-looking shots more often than not in this game. Not that Illinois got nothing but good looks, but I think the Cougs defended the Illini well, all things considered, but I can't remember too many possessions from watching and rewatching this game where I thought a U of H player missed a really good look. It happened, but not very often. It was very much the exception to the rule when it happened. And two, the Cougs weren't getting very many of those frequent misses. Illinois, in addition to being a great offensive rebounding team themselves, were much, much better than the Cougs for the season and certainly on Thursday night at keeping their opponent from grabbing offensive boards for the, I would say this is usually a program, this U of H program, where 1 through 5, whether that player is a guard, whether that's a front court player, that you can count on the Cougs getting offensive boards, and those vital second chance possessions just didn't happen even close to often enough in this basketball game. Cenac and Tugler combined for a respectable 5 offensive boards. Rest of the team, Bobby, do you know how many rebounds the rest of the players that were not named Chris Cenac Jr. and JoJo Tugler got on Thursday night?
I do not.
1.
It's not good, man.
I don't want to pick on a player who I genuinely like a lot, but Khalifa Sacco playing 8 minutes and getting 0 offensive rebounds or 0 rebounds of any kind.
Yeah, that's tough.
Can't happen. Can't happen if you want to survive and advance this late in the NCAA tournament. And we saw some of what you talked about with Cenac, the volatility of having 2 freshmen playing major roles in this team. It would be foolish and incorrect to just blame Flemings and Cenac for this loss. Basically, nobody not named Chase McCarty or JoJo Tugler shot the ball well by any definition. Tugler only took 4 shots the entire game, and McCarty didn't really start making his shots until pretty late when you were trying to dig yourselves out of a very big deficit. Nobody had anything close to a good all-around offensive game, whether they were a veteran, whether they were a younger guy. But your 2, I would say, highest usage freshmen going 7 of 22 from the field, it loomed large here. You saw the youth of this year's team as compared to last year's team, where your youngest starter last year was Tugler as a sophomore, and everyone else in the lineup and rotation had all those guys played at least 4 years of college basketball. Like you're not as veteran this year. Like you have some veteran guys, some great veteran guys that we're going to talk about here somewhat later that are going to be very missed in this program. And that's not a larger statement on Flemings and Sinak, they gave you a ton of good stuff over the course of the season. But if you watch enough March Madness, you'll see this kind of thing happen. You'll see the team that's a little bit younger that has the freshmen playing key roles. I think the most famous example of that, even though it's a more extreme example of the Cougars, Kentucky in the final few years of Calipari being there. I mean, there was some March craziness that happened there, but they were more susceptible to the volatility of March Madness, the single elimination tournament, because they were very talented, but also very young. And really, for the first time since Sampson's taken over here, you saw the Cougs get bit in the butt a bit by being a bit younger than their opponent.
Yeah, in March, you do want a little bit more experience. Not to say that freshmen can't do well. Obviously, they do. But in those big pressure moments, you need, and I've said this before, right? This season, you need a guy. Typically, they're an older player, a more seasoned player who just comes in and says, "Give me the ball. We're scoring." And this year, that guy was a freshman, and in big moments, it's not to say that like Kingston back down or anything like that, or Sinak back down. They're just freshmen. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different environment. And yeah, you saw that youth and inexperience more than anything come out this in the game in versus Illinois.
And the defending was very good in the balance of this game. I feel no less strongly about that now as I did kind of sitting sadly on my couch processing this game after it went final. Illinois definitely had its moments offensively where the Cougs looked a bit out of sorts defensively, but that was always going to happen. This was the best offensive team we saw the entire season. This was never going to be the kind of game where you shut them down for 40 minutes and held them in the 50s points wise and did nothing offensively. This opponent was too good for that to ever be a realistic scenario. And I thought the Cougs did a good job of the balance. Something I think you mentioned quickly at the top, I don't think you really got into too bad of foul trouble in this one. I would say you didn't do a really good job there. JoJo Tugler was limited in the second half. I think he picked up his fourth foul earlier than you probably liked in the second half. But from my memory, he was the only player who was in any kind of noticeable foul trouble. I mean, if you look at the box score, you had 7 more fouls in the line. I went back through the play-by-play. 5 of those were intentional fouls late when you were trying semi-successfully with sending Kylan Boswell, who temporarily forgot how to make free throws, to the line, get back in this game. So you were about even on fouls and only had one player really affected by foul trouble, which again, that's one of those details. If you had told me that before the game and that you would hold Illinois to their second lowest points total, I would have been like, oh man, who are we playing the Elite Eight, Bobby? Like,
yeah, exactly. And that was kind of my point, is like, you did everything that we had talked about doing right to win this game. You did, except for just putting the ball in the basket. And I think that's what was so frustrating for me.
I mean, it was a microcosm this game was of all the warts we've seen from what was still a very, very good team on the balance of the year.
Yeah.
You had the offensive cold spells, something we saw, especially against the highest level opponents from the regular season. And the postseason, you had a big one against Arizona in the Big 12 championship game, if you want to talk about the conference or NCAA postseason. And Thursday night, it came against a truly elite offensive opponent that you could not afford to have that level of cold spell against. You didn't get much from the bench scoring wise while this game was close. I realized Chase McCarty hit some big shots, was critical as you tried to make a late comeback. You won't find many Cougar fans in the big picture higher on what McCarty's going to be for this program than I am. But you needed some points from whether it was McCarty, Mercy Miller, or Khalifa Sacco earlier in this game. You didn't get him. Like, Illinois was outscoring you by a massive margin on the bench, and that was a problem all season. Problem all season. Like, you had a 5-star recruit, and we're gonna get to this. You had a 5-star recruit on the bench who, quite frankly, was unplayable the last month of the season because he just wasn't playing very well. Like, that was a problem with this team that you couldn't fix midseason, and ultimately part of not being able to fix it was your season ending the Sweet 16. And one of the most overlooked ones, Bobby, we've talked about this a little this season, but really not that much. An inability to, against anyone really, to consistently get to the free throw line. I mean, A&M in the round of 32, you did somewhat, but the numbers are the numbers. You were one of the worst teams in the country at free throw rate. And more years than not, Sampson's teams here have been fine offensively without getting to the line a bunch or having that being a huge part of your offensive repertoire. But in hindsight, it's kind of a shame that this team who had two really good free throw shooters in Emmanuel Sharp and Kingston Flemings, couldn't do a bit more of that. And you certainly didn't do very much of what would have even prompted the officials to blow a whistle, like you said earlier, and you just weren't putting yourself in position to get to the line. There were one or two times where I thought maybe Sharp should have gotten shots or an and one, but I mean, not anything close enough to have changed the final outcome in any meaningful way. I mean, bottom line, we knew coming in this Illinois team would be among the very best you saw all season. You need to step your game up accordingly, and it didn't happen. And that's why we're talking about this season in the past tense. It's the beauty and the tragedy of a winner-go-home tournament. Like March Madness, eventually everyone's number gets called, and our number got called last Thursday night.
Yeah, it's like I've said about 5 times. You mentioned what I was gonna say there is you just couldn't make shots, and you mentioned the inability to get to the line and not doing that. Sam, one of the things that's kind of caught my attention for most of this season was on KenPom. There is a statistic about the distance from which you shoot your 2-point shots.
Yep.
Um, we will finish the year at 364th out of 365 teams, if I recall. What does that tell me? Well, that tells me you're not getting to the rim, right? You're not getting to the rim, and when you don't get to the rim, you don't get a lot of calls. You're not going to get free throws when you're pulling up mid-range jumpers. There's just not a lot of fouls that happen there. There's not a lot of body contact. You'll occasionally get hit on the hand, or something along those lines. But yeah, that's just kind of something I noticed that. But I'm kind of going through KenPom here, and you didn't do a very good job of it last year. The year before, you were a little bit better. 23, you were 246th in the country in itself.
I think the only team that was top 200 was the first Final Four team in 21.
Yeah,
of Sampson's tournament teams and free throw rates, which has never been a big part of what you do. Yeah,
it's never been, to your point, a big part of what you do. But you had an inside ability, right? You had that mid-range jumper, but you had Wani who could go down low, get you a bucket, draw you a foul when you really needed one. You were really missing that this year. I don't think JoJo took that step forward that we kind of thought he would offensively, and you can tie that to a bunch of things, right? His injury over the offseason, things like that, that I'm sure we can talk about, the wisdom tooth removal, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you didn't have an inside presence, and when you don't have that inside presence or somebody who can really get downhill and get to the bucket, it's going to be hard for you to draw some fouls there.
In my opinion, JoJo got better, but did he progress all the way to where Wani Roberts was a season ago? No, like that, and that's not even.
Or where you needed him to be this year.
Yeah, I think you saw a step forward. I think you saw something better than what he did his freshman, sophomore seasons. I think you saw enough to be like, hey, going to his senior year, he really could be that dude. But was it enough over the length of this season? No, and if it was, you might still be playing basketball. Like that. That's how it wasn't. And you didn't have enough confidence in him to, I mean, I know Illinois had a ton of size, but you just didn't get a ball. I mean, a lot of things went wrong offensively. I think putting the ball in the basket's most obvious, but also not getting the second chances. I mean, it was always going to be very difficult to beat this Illinois team. You were always going to have to play close to your best basketball game. And other than defensively, yeah, I think you could look at this game and find a lot of areas where you didn't play well enough to beat the caliber of opponent that you'd see generally in this round, and that certainly you were seeing in the form of Illinois, the best 3 seed left, in a team that's going to be among the last 4 playing for the title this coming weekend.
Yep.
So we did get the very happy but not surprised news that Kelvin Sampson would be back for the coming season, quashing, in my opinion, any rumor that he'd be retiring in the super near future. Is pretty adamant that still burns to do this, still wants to be a coach, still loves doing it. No surprise, I think, that Kelvin's not going to be pulling up Bruce Pearl and retiring and leaving his son and successor a serious roster rebuild in his first time as a head coach, which is good. Just speaking for me, I didn't see any realistic non-health reason scenario where Kelvin wasn't on the sidelines this season to come here in about 7 months.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. In my opinion, this isn't because we have like insider info. In fact, I would argue that we don't have insider info at all. Um, I think for me, I feel like he's got about 3 more years left in him, or he wins a national title. Um, I don't know why I feel like it's three. That just feels like the number that feels right to me, or a national title, whichever one kind of comes first here.
Yeah, it's kind of generally where I'm at here next 3 or 4 years as well. We usually wait until the end of the season for a larger look at the players who will be returning to the Cougars. And well, I think there's a good chance at different points in the offseason we'll be doing a deeper dive into this, and perhaps maybe on our Patreon feed here in the next few weeks as the 26-27 roster picture becomes a bit less fluid. Still worth a quick look at who isn't or likely isn't coming back to this team. Bobby, I got to start with Emmanuel Sharp. I mean, one of the 3 players in this, 4 players, excuse me, along with Miles Uzan, Khalifa Sacco, and Ramon Walker Jr., who are definitively out of college eligibility. Another example of a guy coming to this program as a good recruit, but not a surefire. This guy's going to be one of the best players in the country, level of recruit, and developing into one of the best this program's seen in its recent history. I mean, it was really awesome to see him develop from his redshirt freshman season, where he was a willing shooter, and that was my first impression of him in the 22-23 season opener against Northern Colorado, I believe, his Cougar debut. You know, it was like, okay, like this kid's willing to bomb a shot, which is good because you see a lot of freshmen who look tentative, they looked maybe a little overawed. And my first impression of Emmanuel Sharp is like, oh, this guy's got a green light in his head, and that was positive. But to see him develop not just into an advanced scorer, but your tone setter on defense, tone setter for this entire team, and everything he did on the court in games, the work in practice. At the risk of quoting Fran Fraschilla, somebody whose TV color commentary I have a love-hate relationship with, Bobby, Sharp really was the culture warrior of Kelvin Sampson's program by the time he was an upperclassman. And as much as his program's bread and butter has been developing guys into great players and then replacing them with other guys who have developed into great players, never going to be an easy task to replace an Emmanuel Sharp. I think it's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you expect to replace an Emmanuel Sharp in the following year perfectly. You are going to have some drop off. He'll always be known as one of the all time Cougar greats, one of, if not the best shooters in program history. I was trying to, at least in my time that I've been around,
It's him and LJ
uh,
Fryer. I feel like that's your 1A and 1B.
yeah, at least since '07 when I started going to Cougar basketball games. But even that I even kind of went back through um some Slama. I don't know if there was a better shooter than that. You can see how much he meant to Sampson and this program at his senior day. Really gonna be it's gonna be weird not seeing him on the court, but luckily it's not for injury or something like that. He is hopefully going to get paid somewhere, maybe not the NBA, but I think he may follow in his dad's footsteps and make a nice paycheck overseas somewhere.
I have a couple of friends out here in Vegas who I talk college basketball with. Just not a huge college. I know I have friends who are sports fans, but just like not a huge college sports town, weirdly enough. But 2 friends that I talk ball with, and one of them watched a decent amount of U of H over the season. He's become absolutely convinced that Emmanuel Sharp has an NBA future just because of his crazy range shooting threes. I know enough about myself to know that I can't predict who will or won't stick in the NBA long term beyond the most obvious prospects. I just have a hard time believing that Emmanuel Sharp's future doesn't involve a number of years playing high-level pro basketball, whether that's in the NBA or in one of the better overseas leagues. Not sure about that. And really only one of those things that we could accurately assess years and years from now. But like you said, like I've said, one of the handful of best Sampson era U of H player. I refuse to acknowledge any list of the best that we've watched in each of our about 20-ish years following this program that doesn't include Sharp with the likes of Rob Gray, Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shedd, Wani Roberts, that tier of Cougar men's basketball player from this program. All-time career U of H leader in 3-point field goals made. I mean, it's always a team effort when you see a team consistently win at the level that this program has won at, and making regular deep runs into March Madness, winning multiple Big 12 titles. But you certainly don't get there these last few years without Emmanuel Sharp, just an absolute critical player for, I think, this team really establishing itself in the Big 12. Not the first time I've said this, not the last time. And for all the love I have for all the guys who likely or certainly have played their last game for the Cougars that we're going to talk about, I wouldn't say this about any other guy in this group. I'm going to have a hard time imagining watching this team next season without number 21 in the lineup. It's going to feel weird. He is one of those small handful of guys where it's just like you see the lineup, whether it's on TV, and just not hearing Emmanuel Sharp from Tampa, Florida being a part of it. Like, sadness isn't the right word for it, because I think he has a lot of basketball left to play, but lacking a better word, I'm kind of sad we didn't get an ending to Sharp's career where he was cutting down the nets in the last games. I really think he was that kind of player that deserved it.
Yeah, that would be the way. I think I agree with you that if any player in Cougar history has earned it, I feel like Emmanuel Sharp would be the one who would be most deserving of doing that.
Going to mention also, fellow starting backcourt player Milos Uzan has exhausted his college eligibility after playing his last 2 seasons at U of H, in addition to the 2 seasons he played at the University of Oklahoma to start his college career. His current season was polarizing, but I think it's worth taking Milos' U of H career in its entirety, because going into last season, he played the only position on last year's team that was a question mark going into it, point guard. And his arrival was kind of a surprise, but I think we all kind of took it on faith that Kelvin Sampson knew what he was doing. And I think far more than he wasn't. Even this most recent season, Uzan was a positive for this team. It's kind of wild how he went from Uzan's first season in the program, where the roster really had a deficit of anyone else who could be the primary ball handler for any extended period of time if Milos is in foul trouble or just needed a breather, to going to the most recent season where he played a good chunk of his minutes alongside another point guard, Kingston Flemings, and had to do a lot of figuring out of who does what when you have multiple guys who could possibly be the point on the floor at one time. And the numbers are the numbers. His production declined in this most recent season. I still don't think that should really negatively impact the big picture view of what Milos did in his 2 years at U of H. I think worth a quick reminder of some of the really incredible performances he had from the title run season. Game-winning shot against Purdue in what was essentially a road environment at last year's Sweet 16, part of a 29-point performance where none of his teammates were hitting shots. If Milos had like a B- game against Purdue last year instead of an A+ game, I mean, Bobby, I think there's a decent chance we would have been coming back here in a similar spot to this year, talking about, man, yeah, you just couldn't beat Purdue on the road. I mean, that was a really incredible in addition to the game-winning shot. Carrying the Cougs to a pair of wins over Arizona. I remember watching him in Tucson really carry the team at times offensively while also playing lockdown defense on the Wildcat guards. Also had 25 points in the Big 12 title game win over U of A that season. 22 points, including the game icing FU three-pointer in the revenge game win at Tech as well. Had 17 points, 9 boards, and 9 assists in that insane come-from-behind win at Fog Allen as well. I think, if anything, we all probably underrate what an incredible 24-25 season he had, because he was surrounded by other really great program legend Cougar teammates at the time. And yeah, hate that his last season was a challenge at times. Hate that he, like Sharp, didn't get to go out as champion.
Yeah, I mean, when he came over from Oklahoma, it was like a cool transfer. You're like, oh, okay, that's probably our answer to point guard. But it didn't make you like lose your mind. You weren't overly excited about it. You weren't like, oh hell yeah, we're automatically a national title contender. You were kind of like, really? Okay. I mean, I guess I trust Sampson. And it just kind of felt like a solid move. But Milos proved way more than I expected him to last year, to your point. He became one of your best defenders, and you knew he could score when he came over from Oklahoma. Maybe not the bucket getter that we ended up seeing, but he really wanted to come to U of H to be a better defender. That was kind of the flaw in his game. And he did that and probably proved enough maybe to get drafted. I know last year he was kind of on that cusp of a first rounder. I would imagine this year he might be a second round pick somewhere. Is he a first rounder? Probably not. But you can look for him to get his name called. Another Cougar great, had some moments that made you get up out of your seat. And yeah, another guy that we will miss a ton wearing the white and black, because we very rarely wear red uniforms on the basketball.
Theoretically could. We'll also mention your two graduating guys who came off the bench this year, Ramon Walker Jr. and Khalifa Sacco. For me, health is the painful what could have been for Ramon in his U of H career. Like Sharp, we shall have immense appreciation that Ramon stuck around for an entire 5-year college career with the Cougar program. He theoretically could have gone elsewhere. I'm always going to remember his freshman season, the 21-22 season, when he was thrown into action, probably a lot earlier in his career than we expected, because you had the season-ending injuries to Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark that year. We had an insane, you might remember this one, Bobby, an insane double overtime win at Wichita State where he made one of the most absurd dives to keep a ball alive on a critical possession you will ever see a Houston Cougar player make, even though we have seen a lot of Houston Cougar players doing absurd dives to get a ball, over the last decade or so. Hate that we lost largely 2 seasons of his playing here due to injury, because he was a really incredible culture fit for this program. And I wish we could have seen what a mostly healthy Ramon Walker career in Houston Cougar men's basketball could have looked like. And Sacco, like I've talked about multiple times during this current season, for me, he really exceeded the expectations I had for him when he signed last summer as a transfer from Sam Houston. At the time when he signed, I don't think I even took it as a certainty that he'd get more minutes than his fellow bench big man said Lot. And he ended up being your first guy off the bench more often than not. I mean, a couple of early season moments really stood out for me. His defense in the final possession at Auburn, when you had Tugler and Snack fouled out, and what was at the time a big momentum win, basically playing them on the road in Birmingham, grabbing 5 offensive boards and playing really great defense in a similar spot in the OT win over Syracuse in the opening game of the Players Era event when JoJo had fouled out again, grabbed 5 boards in that one as well. I thought it was really cool. Like he's a guy, he's played JUCO, he played multiple levels of kind of mid-major ball, that he finally got to go out as part of a really good program and played more than a token role in that really good program.
Yeah, really, really good stuff from Sacco. Did everything that I really wanted to get out of your backup big man this year. Would have loved a little bit more scoring, but his game was a perfect fit for what it's been clear the Cougs are trying to do. And then Ramon Walker really just kind of feels like one of those Sampson guys. You're exactly right. The injuries will play the big what if, but yeah, looked good when he could play. But yeah, those two as well. Like you said, a lot of good stuff from them. The big injuries from Ramon Walker, and then Sacco. I felt like he had a really good season this year and did kind of what you needed him to do.
So we don't have an official word yet on either player, but there's a good chance Thursday was the last time we see both Kingston Flemings and Kristanak Jr. suiting up for the Cougs. In Fleming's case, I would go as far as to say it would be irresponsible for him not to go in the draft, because he's basically inside the top 10 of every mock draft out there. Sadak will likely be a lower part of the first round pick, is apparently still weighing his options. I would assume in the next few days we'll get he's entered the pre-draft process. Why did I have such a hard time saying pre-draft process, Bobby? He was entering
that's a lot of PR right there. Process, pre-draft process. I get it.
Entering the pre-draft process, but with a chance to return to school, I think is the most likely outcome here, probably sometime after we record this episode. Would expect he's still weighing his options. In my opinion, I would be at least somewhat surprised if he goes back to college for a second season. Flemings will certainly go down as probably the best one-and-done Cougar to come through this program. One of the very best we've gotten to watch in this program ever. I remember after Dustin's wedding, sitting in the Austin airport and noticing that he was in the starting lineup for the last preseason exhibition against Mississippi State out in, I think it was in Rosenberg, and thinking, maybe I've underestimated his ability to contribute from day one. And Bobby, I underestimated his ability to contribute from day one. We could do an entire next 30 or 40 minutes talking about Kingston Fleming's likely one season here. Just an incomplete selection of highlights. 22 points in that quasi road win I mentioned over Auburn, most of it in the first half while his teammates struggled. 23 in that dramatic comeback home win over Tech, including the clutch 3-pointer to put the Cougs ahead for good, carrying you with a 42-point performance in a road loss against Tech, 22 in the loss at Iowa State, 21 and 3 steals. in that dominant rematch whenever KU at the Big 12 championships. Phenomenal player, phenomenal young man who clearly bought whole hog into what U of H is about under Kelvin Sampson. High confidence that he's going to be a guy we watch in the NBA ranks for many, many years to come after this one.
Oh, Sam, we aren't just going to watch him in the ranks. We are going to see him in a wonderful blue, sometimes green jersey. I will say,
the second he gets drafted by someone else, I am going to blow your phone,
dude,
the fuck up. You better mute notifications on our little text message thread. That's all I'm saying. I'll be muting mine. To be clear,
I do want you to know I did a. I was looking at mock drafts to kind of talk about Sinek, which I'll talk about here in a second. And with the lottery, you're kind of guessing, right? And I saw one, and I was like, this might be the worst case scenario for Houston fans. And it was Kingston going number 7 to the Mavs, and then Chris Sinek going to the Spurs. And then,
how dare you? How dare you even mention that as possible?
And then in the second round, the Rockets picked JT Toppin. I was like, Sam might die.
Honestly, JT Toppin in the second round is actually a decent value. Like,
that's where most have him going because of the knee injury. But this isn't a Texas Tech podcast.
Yeah.
But I could only imagine.
That would take a little bit of the sting out of it, because I'm like, okay, he's actually a pretty good value for the second round. Like, they might be cooking something here. Like, I don't like Tech, but I wouldn't mind him. Sorry.
No, who's the guy on Iowa State that you absolutely hate?
Taman Lipsey.
Imagine if the Rockets.
I'm sorry, Dustin. I absolutely hate his guts.
Imagine if Lipsey gets picked by the Rockets and they.
Yeah. I'm sorry. They're not gonna draft a 5'11" guy whose primary contribution is flopping.
But yeah, just as Flemings is gone, if he's not something, gonna be a top 10 pick. I really enjoyed his time. Sam, were there many freshmen? Definitely not since we've been a fan. And I kind of went back and looked at Phi Slamma, as I said earlier. It's hard to find a freshman more impactful in their one season with the Cougs and in their true freshman season more than Kingston Flemings. And really, I can kind of take that out to pretty much any sport when you really think about it. Yeah, the guy was incredible this year. As far as Sinek goes, like you said, I'm almost certain he'll leave and declare for the draft. Most drafts I saw had him going in the first round where the money's guaranteed, but he is kind of right there on the cusp. We're gonna, to your point, do a premium pod where we talk about roster lineup and what we think we'll see. But if he doesn't go, not to like put this bad juju out there, does he come back a Houston Cougar? Right? I would think so. But if JoJo stays, right, because there's a chance JoJo Tugler stays and doesn't declare, you have your 7'1" recruit coming in. Do you tell the freshman, hey, you are going to get minutes when JoJo's out and when Sinek gets in foul trouble or something like that? Like, how does that kind of work? And so, yeah, a little interested to see where things fall over the next month or so, I'd say.
I thought you were going to say is like hey, does he come back because our NIL operation is incredibly Mickey Mouse? That's where I thought you were going with that one.
No, I
took the high road. Probably part of it too.
I took the high road, but I do appreciate you bringing us down to that road.
That's what I'm good for, Bobby. I'm always good to bring us to the low road. Go back to the high road. I will say, it's no small feat that Chris Sinek Jr. came in here as a freshman, as a day one starter in a program where, regardless of where you were rated as a recruit, what position you're playing, you have to come in and earn every minute you get. And I'm positive the not so great game he had against Illinois is going to stick in his mind. And for at least some Cougar fans, seems to have colored how they feel about him staying or leaving. But to me, it was extra painful because I feel like Chris was playing his best basketball in March.
Me too.
I mean, you had the 17-point, 14 rebound performance in the win over KU, where he did a lot of that early and really helped you get out to a big kind of punch KU in the mouth level of lead. 18 boards against Idaho in the round of 64, 17 points and 18 boards while being completely unguardable in the round of 32 win over A&M. I would say, unless he's hearing from teams that he's no longer a lock to go in the first round, which I don't believe will end up being the case, I think this will be the last season that we see him here, much as I would just absolutely love to see what a sophomore year version of Chris Sinak looks like in a U of H jersey. If he's getting a first round grade back from his pre-draft workouts, I could take off my Cougar red glasses and say probably shouldn't delay the start of his professional basketball career.
Yeah, and you can totally see what scouts would love about him. He's a big, tall athlete who can shoot occasionally when he gets hot. Doesn't panic when he gets the ball. Like, you can see NBA on that guy. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what happens with him over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think you got to look at him, what he's going to look like in 2 or 3 years as a basketball player, as opposed
Especially
to what he looks like now.
Not to like this is in no way meant to be like any kind of shot at Sampson or anything like that. As you know, I would never. But NBA development looks different than college basketball development for sure.
Yeah, that's any program.
Yeah, so not to say that he couldn't develop under Sampson or something like that, but a year on the bench, you've seen it with Jarris Walker this year. Jarris Walker's looked pretty good in some of his games this year, and I don't know if he would have developed quite as quickly, or not even quickly, because it hasn't been like super quick, but as strong as you saw with that he's gotten with the Pacers so far.
So even if something like Sinak coming back happens, there's no way that we're not going to have a very different looking Cougar men's basketball team here when the season kicks off in a little over 6 months, which, as you mentioned, Bobby, we will talk about more in our soon to be recorded 26-27 Cougar men's basketball look ahead. They'll be dropping on the Patreon feed here in not too long as the roster starts to take shape. While we're on the subject of hoops, though, we figured we'd do quick updates on players from both the men's and women's basketball programs who have gone into the transfer portal in the last week or so. We'll lead with the most recent announcement of a player transferring out from either program, and that came last night, Monday night, as freshman guard Isiah Harwell announced he would be entering the transfer portal. Harwell came to the Cougs as a consensus 5-star recruit, though 5-star recruit coming off a serious knee injury, and you could sort of see that in a season where Harwell at times struggled to find his role and didn't have the obvious confidence that you often see from high-end blue-chip high school recruits. And Harwell ended up getting on the court a fair amount, played in all but 5 of the Cougs' regular season NCAA tournament games this year. But I'll be honest, I'd really struggle to tell you what he did well or what I thought he looked like he had the potential to do well long-term. But that also doesn't mean Harwell can't or won't figure it out. I mean, just purely on what I watched of 30-ish games, that's just me saying I couldn't tell you what I identify him as him being good at. And this may sound harsh, but the bench got a lot better when Mercy Miller and Chase McCarty surpassed Harwell in the pecking order. Bobby, thoughts on the Cougs transfer here?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on what Isiah Harwell can do than maybe you were, or you are. I think there was a lot of, I wouldn't mind just seeing what he could do on our roster. You have a true freshman come in, a highly regarded true freshman, but he's coming off that bad ACL injury. I wouldn't mind seeing a full year of him being in the program healthy and what that would do for him. But I'm also not like crying tears that he is leaving. I'm not shocked when you are a recruit of that level and you don't play your freshman year. You kind of see stuff like this, especially in basketball.
Yeah, I would rather have them than not, to be clear. Like, I'd like to see how he developed in this program, but I would say, in my opinion, he needs to go to a program where he can be the guy, because I said this to you last night when we texted after this news broke. If he goes to another power program, it's just going to be another Terrence Arsenault at NC State situation. He may come off the bench. He may play more games than he doesn't, but if he goes there, his role likely won't look much different than it did at Houston. Again, just my opinion, he needs to go somewhere where he could be the man or one of a team's top go-to guys offensively. And if that means dropping down to playing in like the Mountain West or the new Pac-12, so be it. He has got to get his confidence back. And if he does, no reason to think Isiah can't come good on that incredible recruiting pedigree. I'm sorry It didn't work out from here, but I think both parties will benefit ultimately from this parting of ways. If I had to bet on it, I would say I would bet he is going to be an all-conference player, if not a multi-time all-conference player in his college career when it's all said and done.
There you go.
And in the last couple of weeks on the Cougar women's basketball side, we had guards Kiera Merchant, Summer Bostock, and Shantari Anumele indicate that they would be entering the transfer portal. Merchant was the lone player out of that trio who played a significant role and she was the lone returning player who played a significant role 2 seasons ago before head coach Matthew Mitchell arrived here. She started in 14 of the team's 29 games this most recent season, averaged just under 9 points and 4.3 rebounds per game. Anumele averaged 3.4 points per game, almost entirely coming off the bench. And Bostock only played in one game early in the season. I believe was not with the team for the majority of the season after playing some as a true freshman 2 seasons ago in Ronald Huey's last season. In Merchant's case, it hurts to lose a local product who clearly enjoyed representing the Cougars. I don't know, Bobby, other than this year's freshmen, Kayla King and Jade Jones, there's not really a departure from any of the projected returners who would have concerned me. We figured with a full offseason now to build and a number of players who have college eligibility that the roster for the coming season would look pretty different. So can't say the movement here is really that much of a surprise.
Yeah, not a major shock or anything like that. One of the things that I kind of pointed out at the end of the season is it looks like you are trying to get bigger, and Kier Merchant coming in at 5'9", while not small for women's basketball. Seems like the staff wants a little bit bigger player coming in, and you can really tell that a lot of this was, let's bring some people in, let's get everyone needed to just test everything. Let's just see what we got here. We'll take a year. We're going to see what we got. And now you're seeing what the coaching staff was offering to players in terms of playing time and all of that. And you're going to see, I think you'll see more, I don't want to say defections, but more players entering the portal this year than you saw last year, even with the new staff, because now everyone knows what the staff is kind of about. But Sam, it could be worse. We could be Iowa State. So
this is true. Definitely excited to see what the second year roster under Coach Mitchell looks like. Ideally, you retain this year's freshmen, King and Jones. You bring in a high school class with multiple well-rated players, and obviously you're going to have to dip in the transfer portal a fair amount to fill out the roster, but curious to see what that looks like as compared to last year when you were coming in pretty late in the game. Coach Mitchell was having to hire a staff. By the time everything was settled there, you were kind of behind the 8 ball. You were less behind the 8 ball this year, so I'm curious what the roster building looks like, and we'll certainly update that as we get deeper in the basketball offseason and the comings and goings of players in college women's basketball and college men's basketball, as you said earlier, is settled. And we'll kick off tonight's spring sports talk by checking in with Cougar Track and Field, who has now begun its outdoor season, has had multiple meets since we last talked about the team. I believe that was immediately after NCAA Indoors here on the pod. Bobby, catch us up with what H-Town Speed City has been up to in the first couple outdoor meets of the spring.
Yeah, man, they actually participated in 2 events to kind of kick off their outdoor season. They hosted the Kirk Baptiste Invitational. Didn't seem like a crazy stacked event. Really, it gave me the vibes of scheduling like an out of conference game in football, where you just maybe not like an SFA style, but maybe something like a Rice style. The only other real team I saw that was making appearances was Harvard, was popping up quite a bit. But with that being said, you did have 12 wins in the event. You got 4 meet records, which I'm going to call out over calling out every single event win in something like this. You had Cordell Nwoki set the meet record and a personal best of 19.48 meters. Crazy, because that also moves him into second all time. But what's even crazier is the next day, he actually went further at another event that I'm going to talk about, where he threw 19.55 meters at Rice. So that was that's pretty cool to see. USA Cleo Agjapong set the meet record of 16.37 meters. I kind of looked it up because I'm like, is that actually pretty good? Early in the season, caveats being early season caveats, but that is the number 14th throw in the country already this year. Room to throw even further. You also saw Zion Alston take the women's 100 record with a time of 11.55 seconds. And then Kyrie Woolridge takes the 400 with a time of 54.12. Like I said, you also went to Rice for the Victor Lopez Invitational. You got 12 wins there. Overall, it's looking like a pretty good season for the start to the season for track this year. This week coming up, you do have the big Texas relays later this week. It's usually the first real let's test ourselves versus a stout competition meet to really judge, like I said, where you stand in the competition.
Yeah, I think that's always one of the really exciting early season outdoor track and field meets. You've had some big moments from previous Cougar track seasons at the Texas relays. Glad you mentioned that, and I think, like you said, the first meet or two generally has almost a preseason feel. Like some of your best athletes at times, you're being rested, especially because usually those athletes competed a fair amount in the indoor later stages of the season as well. So you're not necessarily trying to overwork those athletes early in the outdoor season. Texas relays feels like, not that there weren't meaningful takeaways. You mentioned a lot of them from the first two meets, but I feel like that's when things really kick into gear in the outdoor season.
Yeah, and something you always see at in track, or in racing events, I guess you could say. They tend to run faster when the competition's good. Like there's an extra gear
Oh
that a
yeah.
lot of sprinters are like, no, I'm just gonna run fast, like faster. I don't even think they think about it. I think it's just something that, like, they see the guy next to them and they go, that guy's fast, I need to be fast. So that's another reason why I think you kind of see a build up in terms of speeds throughout the season.
We'll definitely have plenty of things to talk about from that one next time we come here and record a pod, because Texas Relays, as we've both said, one of those big early season events. We'll stay with the spring sports as we approach the closing stages of the regular season and check back in with our latest edition of Cougar Tennis Corner. Coogs opened last weekend with what we knew would be a difficult matchup against, at the time, number 21 ranked UCF. I don't believe there should be any disappointment at the overall result here. UCF has always been in that group of conference matches where I thought winning would be extraordinarily difficult. To me, the disappointment is just, in a 4-1 loss, you actually had chances to maybe put a bit more pressure on this highly ranked opponent. The Cougs lost the doubles portion of the match, lost on courts 2 and 3 pretty decisively. Chems and Sophie were down 4-3 on court 1 when that portion of the match was called, giving UCF a 1-0 lead. I think the frustrating part of this match was that the Cougs really weren't ever out of any of the 6 singles matches. Chems on court 2 was the only Cougar player to lose in straight sets, and that was a 6-4, 7-5 final, so competitive throughout, even in a loss. I mean, the difference there might have been a set break or two by UCF's athlete there. Very competitive. As she's often done this spring, Sophie won in straight sets on court 6, pushed her record this spring to an awesome 14-1 in singles, and then every other singles match went to 3 sets. Lisa and Eva lost their first sets on courts 1 and 3, but both forced a second set with pretty decisive wins. Unfortunately, both dropped their third sets pretty decisively, with Eva's loss ultimately giving UCF their 4th point to clinch the overall match. Valeria and Pechia won their first sets on courts of 4 and 5, but neither could win their matches in the second set. Both were still playing in third sets when the match was called. The Cougs at different points this year have done a good job closing out matches. I think that was one of your big problems last season. You had some matches where I'd come back on and be like, yeah, I think we could have taken a point or two if we had closed out a bit better. And you've been a lot better at closing this season, but facing a top 20 opponent just unfortunately couldn't get it done here. And so I think that's the part that will stick in Coach Cat and the team's craw a bit. Not that, oh, we really could have won this match, that you had at least some opportunities to put pressure on a very good opponent and ultimately could not do it. Nothing that you competed here, because it's been many seasons since this program could say they were actually able to compete against this level of opponent, but ultimately a 4-1 loss where you probably left it feeling like you could have played better at different points.
So let me ask you this.
Hit me.
It ends 4-1. I'm kind of looking through the singles matches. Looks like you were leading on court 5. Petra was leading on court 5. Do you think this goes 5-2, or just kind of way it was looking? Do you think you maybe end up with losing the fifth game or the fifth court as well.
Yeah, I think Petya closes it out. I think you would have gotten a second one there if you play as a conclusion. Valeria is such a tough player coming from. I mean, she was losing on court 4 when that one went final. It was unfinished ultimately, but she's had so many comebacks over her 2 years in this program that I would never count her out of a match. But I mean, ultimately, you're still talking about a hypothetical there where you only took 3 of the 7 points and didn't win the match. So I would say Petya probably closed with a 4-1 lead, but I wouldn't have counted Valeria out just because she's been one of your better singles players this season. And I can think of a few examples where she's had some good come from behind wins in her Cougar career.
And like, remind me how we did against UCF last year, if you remember.
We lost 4-0 in Orlando and didn't compete.
So you competed here. This team, we've been saying it all year, but it's very clearly a massive step this year. Like last year felt like a big step. This one somehow feels like an even bigger step. Am I totally off base with that?
No, I mean, even if you go 0 for the remaining conference games, which I don't think will happen in any realistic scenario. I mean, you've already quadrupled your wins total. You've been a ranked team for most of the season. You're a team that, as we sit here on March 31st to record, is at least on the bubble, if not on the right side of the bubble for the NCAA postseason, which you haven't been in 11 years. So yeah, definitely a big step forward. And I would still say not the absolute highest end of the best case scenarios that I kind of thought about at the beginning of the season before you'd really played a meaningful amount of matches, but certainly among the better ones at how the season's actually played out. You still have important matches to come. So it's not, I'm not like, oh, well, we're at the end of the season here. I mean, you have 4 Big 12 matches plus the postseason conference championship still to play. So important stuff there. But I would say even acknowledging that still better than a lot of the scenarios I had in my head for what the season could be.
What do you think the Cougs need to do to assure themselves they're on the right side of the bubble?
Well, actually, it goes into my next topic pretty well, buddy.
Perfect. Look at that.
You got number 31 ranked Oklahoma State coming to the Cougs on Friday at 1 p.m. This is the match where the Cougs will honor their 3 seniors currently in the squad: Sophie Schouten, Shems Dohazaguli, and Gabby Cortez. Because I believe this team has a lot of important tennis left to play, I'm not going to talk about those 3 in the past just yet, but suffice to say all 3 have played a big part on and off the court in this team having, I would say, its best season so far. But to your question, if you beat Friday's opponent, Oklahoma State, I think that firmly gets you on the right side of the bubble. And Oklahoma State, which has been one of the Big 12's most consistent Big 12 women's tennis powers, dating back to when your head coach, Kat Adamovich, competed for them and earned All-American honors for them about a decade ago. OSU's had a bit of a turbulent offseason and season. Last summer, their longtime head coach, Todd Young, was fired well into the offseason due to NCAA violations. Former assistant Sergey Avdeyev is currently competing.
I'll allow it.
Sergey Adveyev is currently their interim head coach. At multiple points this season, the Cowgirls have played matches with fewer than the required players. You need 6, 3 doubles pairings of 2, 6 singles players, and they haven't had that for multiple matches this season. That reached a head last weekend. They had to forfeit a scheduled match against BYU last Saturday due to an insufficient number of players. That was their quoted explanation. And the press release from that match stated that the Cowgirls are scheduled to play road matches this weekend at U of H and UCF. U of H has already released content promoting Senior Day against OSU, so decent indicator that it's going to happen. But when your opponent has forfeited a match very recently, it's fair to bring that up as, I don't know, man, like maybe Friday's match doesn't happen. And it's a shame they're having problems with just having enough bodies because they have multiple very good players. Olivia Linker, who played last season at UCF, she's a ranked singles player. Rosemarie Niekamp, I think, is ranked in the top 30 in singles. If they had a full healthy roster, this team would be competing at or near the top of the conference. Still won't take OSU for granted if that match gets played, but I think if it does get played, we're going to be talking about an opponent who is probably, at minimum, very short on the number of bodies that you need to fill this match. And so win standard way or win forfeit, that's another top 35 win on your resume. And thankfully, the Utah and BYU wins have both aged fantastically well. BYU, I think, is number 30. Utah is number 32. Both very much on the right side of the bubble for the tournament, those are teams you got to win again. Like, those are good resume wins. But I think OSU is the level of resume win, the level of name that firmly gets you, barring, I think, a major slip up in the 3 matches after OSU. I think that firmly gets you on the right side of the bubble and gets you an at-large, I think, here in a few weeks.
Heck yeah, man! Let's get the win, whether it's a forfeit or a quote unquote legit.
And you have your home finale on Easter Sunday at 1 p.m. against K-State. With all due respect to the Wildcats, who have some good wins on their spring resume, this is the worst Big 12 team the Cougs will see at home in conference play this season. They're 2-7 coming into the week. They've lost 6 in a row overall. Will be coming off a likely 7th loss in a row at UCF in the match immediately before this one. The best players in their roster are Mongolian sisters Maraglu and Marta Chugsamjau, who have been the Cats' best courts 1 and 2 singles players this spring. The only singles court where the Cats have a winning record this spring is on 6, where that athlete will be facing Sophie Schouten, who has only lost 1 match for the Cougs all spring. We'll say the Cats have been somewhat better in doubles this spring, where the Chugsamjau sisters have a winning record playing together in court 1. Cougs coming this one, I think coming off losing the doubles points in your last 2 Big 12 contests, you're going to need to be better there, not to make this home finale closer than it needs to be, but still fairly confident the Cougs will be able to end the spring home slate with a win when it's all said and done.
Let's go.
Sticking with the spring sports here, we're going to talk about a baseball week that started very promisingly and ended, I think, unfortunately, with pretty familiar disappointment. Last pod, we were reacting live to the Cougs battling back from an early 7-0 deficit to come back and beat then number 2 ranked UT Austin at Schrader Park. All midweek college baseball caveats apply, but it was definitely a credit to this group of guys that they battled back from that early deficit and found a way to beat a team that still, as we sit, has only lost 4 times this season. Bobby, even if not very much we have to talk about after this is positive, that was still a nice moment for this group of guys.
Yeah, man. Anytime you beat the Horns, it's a good feeling, especially off a comeback like that. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but you didn't give up a ton of hits, but boy, you sure did walk a lot of guys, which has been a problem for years now. But again, it's a midweek baseball game, and it just always feels good to win a game against the Horns. I think my favorite part of this, and I saw more than like 5 people say this, and getting like excited on Twitter. But like, if we make the regional, do you get rid of Whitting? Do you sign Whitting to an extension? And you're just kind of like, yeah, buddy. Wait for this weekend. Let's see how this weekend goes. And yeah, pretty quickly they found out that Whitting will not be making a tournament this year.
Probably not. I wanted to shout out also, former Longhorn Easton Winfield had a critical 7th inning home run to get the Cougs going in that one. Riley Jackson, who's having a much better season at the plate, hitting a mammoth solo shot to, I believe, right center to tie the game at 7th. In the 8th inning, Trey Broussard also had a 2 RBI single in the 5th as the Cougs offense finally got going, brought a run home in the 7th when he successfully took second on a double steal. The staff walked 11 Longhorn batters, which, frankly, Bobby, it's incredible that there's actually 3 pitchers that I feel like I could shout out from this one. Caleb Kimball, shout out St. Thomas High, gave you 3 innings of 2-run ball after coming into this game with only 2 1/3 innings combined pitched in his entire college career before this one. Harrison Buechele, who candidly has been one of your least successful relievers all season, 3 2/3 innings of scoreless relief with only 1 walk, really was the relief pitcher who was on the mound during that period that you were mounting the comeback. So I think you should get massive credit to Harrison there. And Ryan Rodriguez, who threw a drama-free 9th inning to clinch the win. No bones about it. Great win. You got to feel happy for the guys in the team getting to experience that. The win made SportsCenter that night. Like, I was watching SportsCenter while I edited the podcast. I was seeing UH baseball highlights, which was kind of surreal. As you said, though, it does feel like kind of an all-for-naught situation because the Cougs got swept at home this weekend by a Baylor team that came into the weekend with only 2 Big 12 wins total. And really none of the games were that competitive when it came down to it. No. In the one game where you got decent pitching, Friday, the bats went missing, and then your pitching returned to its baseline, not very good levels in these Saturday and Sunday games where your staff surrendered double-digit runs in both. Though I will say, 5 errors on Sunday should be probably an even bigger story than the pitching of what went wrong there. I don't really feel the need to go that much deeper on these 3 games because none of the 3 were that close. And frankly, it's embarrassing you couldn't take at least one of the 3 here. Bobby, the crazy thing is that if you had taken 2 of 3 in this series, with the win over UT, metrics-wise, it wouldn't have been an insanely bad spot. I mean, you were coming into the weekend number 74 in the country in RPI, and Baylor had good metrics. Like, you would have probably been, if you had taken 2 or 3, in the 50s or 60s. And for all this team's faults, you have 4 really good resume wins. Wake and BC are both really highly rated. Bama at the Frisco Classic, and now UT Austin. 3 of those 4 are away from home, which means they count even more. But it all kind of doesn't matter because this team can't take care of business in the weekend series against teams of the Pulse. I mean, to wit, you blew the home opening series against UTRGV after winning the opener, lost 2 or 3 to K-State, and then got swept this weekend at Baylor. I'm taking out from the home series Arkansas Pine Bluff because that's never going to be a team that seriously competes with the Cougs. If you're a U of H fan, Bobby, who has gone to every other home weekend series, the team's gone 2-7. 2-7 in weekend games against opponents with a pulse. The few people who are left who care enough to still show up at Trader Park have been treated to a team, in my opinion, that will be lucky to make the Big 12 tournament. Never mind the NCAAs, the tournament that we haven't seen this team compete in for almost a decade. And that's a bad place to be. I mean, all respect to Antoine Jean and how fun he was to watch last year, how fun Trey Broussard and some of the other hitters in this lineup have been this season. But I think we can now truly say without a shadow of a doubt that Chris Pesman's decision to extend Todd Whitting 3 years in the middle of what was already a long postseason drought has, I think, been confirmed to be one of the worst decisions this athletic department has made this century. I'm not asking for a program that's an annual NCAA team that's hosting. I'm just asking for a team that sometimes looks capable of playing that event, and we haven't done it since 2018 and haven't really looked close to being a team of that NCAA tournament level since 2019. I mean, it's just apathy now. Most of the fan base is largely checked out, or if you're younger, never checked into the fact that we have a college baseball program here with real history. I mean, that stinks, but it's where we are.
Yeah, it's most unfortunate. It just sucks, man. You gave up 30 runs in 3 games, and yes, there were 5 errors, and so of the 14 you gave up on Sunday, 14, right? I'm sorry, it's so confusing how which high score game happened.
30 runs in the weekend series, and that's not even your worst pitched weekend series in Big 12 play.
It's so bad, man. It's so bad. 30 runs. That's 10 runs a game, Sam. And you scored 12, 7 of which came in one game. It's just I can't even describe it, and somehow we are going to move on to another sport that might have been even more incredible.
Yeah, we'll just mention very quickly, Cougs will be playing Thursday through Saturday, not Sunday, around Easter Sunday this weekend at Texas Tech in Lubbock. My prediction for the weekend, lots of runs. Tech's been a great hitting team who has struggled about as much as the Cougs on the pitching side, but playing at home, I think that worst weekend pitching mark is going to be reset once again, unfortunately. Hope I'm wrong. Don't think I am. Like you said, though, on the subject of Cougar bat and ball sports that have given up a lot of runs, we're going to check out with Cougar softball, where the outlook is no more positive than it is for baseball, except for the fact that it's a first-year coach versus a 16th-year coach. And I mean, yeah, you got swept by UCF, a team that came into the weekend right on the edge of the top 25. And this was definitely not one of those series that I expected to get anything from at the start of the season. UCF has been a much better program than U of H, dating well before the move to the Big 12. I think it was just another display of how ill-prepared Cougar softball's pitching is to handle the Big 12's better lineups. The Knights scored in double digits all 3 games, combined for 49 runs, including hitting 9 home runs in their 22-8 Sunday finale win. To the Coug hitters' credit, the Sunday game was actually reasonably close going to the 7th, but you can only get so much credit when your opponent puts up an 11 spot in the final inning of the game. We'll shout out Haley Gore, who hit her first college home run in the finale, but precious few positives to take away when you allow 48 or 49 runs over a 3-game weekend series.
Yeah, man. 22 runs in a softball game is one of the most incredible things I've ever
I mean, it's
seen.
like, for context, it is like 40 being scored in a baseball game. That's how much
Yeah.
less common this happens in softball.
Yeah, that's incredible. 22. Was it 9 or 10? Did I miscount? 1, 3, 4,
The home
7.
runs.
Yeah, I thought it was 10.
Oh, it might have been time. I was just going off when I saw UCF say they were like one of 2 or 3 teams this season to have hit 9 home runs in a game, and I was just
Yeah, I
like,
think they
oh
got one more.
no.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is insane, man. 8, 9, 10. 10. They got
10
10
home
home
runs.
runs.
Excuse me. I undersold UCF 10 home runs.
Sam, I gotta be honest with you. I'm not gonna say any names here because we don't, we try not to do this for other athletes in other sports. 8 earned runs in 1 1/3 is spectacular. Almost as good as 3 earned runs in 1/3 of an inning.
Bobby, we're recording this on the final day of March 31st. I'm going to put you on the spot here, as I love to do. How many games total during this month have Cougar pitchers held an opponent to fewer than 8 runs?
You know what's sad is we could include baseball and softball in this.
Man. Softball question, to be clear, but now that I think about it, maybe I should have made it, maybe I should have gone multi-sport in this one.
If I had to guess,
It's a number greater than 0. That's your hint.
yeah, I was gonna say like 3, maybe 4.
You got it. 3.
Yeah,
It was
that
actually
feels.
it was 2, but you beat A&M Corpus 6-1 tonight. By the way, this is funny and not a like, oh, we gave up a comical amount of runs. Funny. 6-1 game. All 7 runs were scored in the first inning, and then nothing was scored after that.
Sounds about right.
But 3 times you beat A&M Corpus tonight 6-1, 7-4 UIW early in the month, and then a 5-0 midweek show of Lamar. But before tonight, it had been 3 weeks to the day since the last time you allowed an opponent fewer than 8 runs in a softball game, which
Not great, but
yeah, it's not great. And this weekend you will travel to Waco for the Thursday through Saturday 3-game series against Baylor, who is 5-4 in Big 12 play to date. I'd give a more detailed look at Baylor, but the Cougs have struggled so badly pitching lately that hard to see this weekend being anything other than a 3-game sweep with what you're getting out there from the staff right now. I would love to be wrong, and the Cougar hitters are still good enough to take a game if by chance you can get a game where you hold Baylor to like 6 or 7 runs, but it's a real I'll believe it when I see it situation, which I don't think is unfair for a team that's putting up historically poor numbers in the circle, but that I do hate for a team that is genuinely one of the better hitting Cougar softball teams in program history. But just unfortunately, you might be the worst pitching staff in program history.
yeah, it's crazy how those can go in opposite directions. Again, like you said, I will believe that this is a Cougar team pitches well enough to win the moment I see it.
No doubt. Wish we were any more positive note, Bobby, but it's where we are. Take us home.
Well, that is it for this week's version of the Scott and Holman podcast. We hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to give us some feedback, we're always open to it. You can find us on social media at SH Podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. Both of those are PAWDCAST. And our email, if you don't want to find us on social media, you can email us shpodcast, again, PAWD, at gmail.com. And if you like the work Sam and I do and you appreciate it and you want to throw a couple of bucks behind us, we would greatly appreciate that as well. You can find us on Patreon to get some really cool premium offerings. We, like I said, are going to do one about the basketball team. We also got some really cool off-season stuff that we have been planning. Sam and I have been talking pretty deep about some off-season stuff. Some stuff will be on the free feed as well as some previews, and then we will also have some things on the premium feed as well. So really looking forward to that. So again, if you want to throw a couple of bucks behind us, it's $5 a month minimum. If you want to give more, we will certainly take it. But Sam, I think I covered everything. What do we always say here, buddy?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!